Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome, greetings, salutation. Happy Memorial Day weekend. Hope everybody is doing well. We're waiting on one of our three amazing guests. Just wanted to first, before they show up, wanted to say what is up, everybody, at the Sports Card Shop at MoCo. I wanted to specifically say good morning to y'all. I know that you have Hobby Hotline on every Saturday morning. So good morning and thank you for having us up. Hope you have a great hobby day. I myself am your Texas card dude. I hope that you all are having an amazing day. And then I have some really cool guy. I don't know his name, but I call him Uncle Rich. It's Mr. Rich Klein. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm all right. How are you?
I am better than I deserve. I greatly appreciate it. And bringing him on here in about 2 seconds is no stranger to the hobby, but he's definitely a stranger to me. And that is Dr. Jim Beckett. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great, Brad. Good to see you, Rich.
Good to see you, Jim.
I was
long time no see. It's less than a week.
Yeah, well, that's kind of fun to have a card show every 6 or 8 weeks. That's a major show in Dallas. Terrific.
Yeah, I was amazed because I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos, but I actually watched quite a few of them about the show. It's amazing to see what goes on. Because where I'm set up, and I was in my own little world, so I really can't see the floor activity. Seeing all that stuff and all the dollars, and even if that was, I'm going to use the word in quotes, a slightly off Dallas card show, there's a heck of a lot of money in that show.
There's money, on the tables. As well as money in the pockets of the people. A lot of it was changing hands. But one thing I noticed from the show is shows are different sounding these days. There's a lot of hurrahs and a lot of shouting and activity and shows used to be quiet. They're not quiet anymore.
Well, when I was doing the shows in the synagogue, I actually once got. One of the people said, you have to, one of the we'll quote unquote elders of the synagogue says, please cancel your show. We're having our Purim spiel rehearsal. And I wrote back saying the dealers love it. There's no way in the heck I'm canceling because of that. As a matter of fact, I wish the calendar would let us have the rehearsal every time we have the spring show because of the energy. And the person said, really? I said, yeah, they don't want to cancel. They love the energy from hearing the rehearsal. So when you have energy in the show, especially if it's external energy, it's really a cool thing. And you're right. I heard a lot of screaming, a lot of hurrahs, and of course, with the amount of money the packs cost nowadays, if you make a good pull, you really are going to scream and joy for getting that good pull.
Like I say, in the old days, you wanted to look at your collection in private. Now you want to have as many people as possible experience that joy with you, or the disappointment.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and we had a few technical glitches last week, but the show went very well for my tables. It was great seeing everybody at my booth, dropping by, and we had 2 nice chats last week. We had Kyle Robertson, the promoter, for about 15-20 minutes until he got called away to deal with some legitimate show emergency, and then we had David Buddy Lee walked past my table. I said, I need to talk to you. And he goes, oh, good. You've got a Raymond Wright rookie for you. No, you're going on the air in 30 seconds. And he did. And he was a trooper. So I was happy about that. But poor David had no idea what he was doing. He just started in the back of the room. And, oh, by the way, you're on the air in 30 seconds.
He's pretty comfortable with all forms of media, Rich, I think, written, speaking, camera, whatever. So he's a pro.
Yeah. So it was fun. So we were very happy with our guests, and it went pretty well. And we got to see Brad and Drew and Val and Logan and John. So we had a whole bunch of people. And then you've already begun posting. We had a very nice event that Saturday night as well. So if you want to talk a little more about it, especially since you've now posted the first 2 parts of it.
Well, I just thought it'd be fun for people to see who was there. It was a very distinguished group. I knew a fair number of them. Actually, I knew a third of them, a third of them virtually, and then a third of them I didn't know at all, and was happy to make their acquaintance. There's just it's a crowded but excellent space of hobby content creators.
And I've got some ideas if we can get them for the next time. There are several people. We had a good crowd, but there are several people who I noticed that were not there. I saw one on one of Jeff Wilson's videos. There's somebody I know locally who's been doing this for a while, not a different type of content creator, but he's definitely been a content creator for years. There's definitely, and what I liked is despite the differences of the people, even my friend Kin, who I like to tease as the get off my lawn guy, he was actually very friendly. He's cool about that. But to me, you need to have different voices as long as they are courteous. It's great to have the different type of voices, whether you have the vintage guys, whether you have the guys like David Lee, as I was mentioning, who does the how to start collecting basic, whether you have the big money guys like Jeff Wilson and his friends, Ryan, who is sitting 2 people down from me, who's young enough to be any of our kids, and he actually converts a lot of modern cards into vintage cards for his collection or to work on. I mean, he was so happy. I was listening to him talk on Jeremy Lee's show last week, and he was happy he picked up a George Sisler card. Not many people would be happy to pick up a George Sisler card. Maybe when you and I were, collecting, we'd be happy. But, the kids today, most of them don't even know who he is. So that was pretty impressive.
George Sisler Jr.
Yes. He's got cards too. He's got Columbus Clipper cards.
And Dave Sisler. What about, what I noticed, Rich, to just pick up on that, is that the courtesy effect is really tamped down when you're in person. The same conversation digitally, online, virtually can get vociferous quickly. Whereas when you're in person, it's like a person in the room and you have a civil conversation. So the civility, there were competitors in the room. There were, competing formats and things like that. I thought it was very civil, very courteous. And that's an environment where you can learn from each other.
I'll tell you one thing I don't miss. And you're talking about civility. In the 80s, there was, at least I would see 1 or 2 actual fist fights at a hobby show a year. And thank goodness I have not seen a fist fight at a hobby show since probably 1988.
Yeah, go to the Target parking lot though.
There it is. There's our first.
No more now.
I'm a little interested in this distinguished comment because I was at this content creators dinner. You calling me distinguished? That's a little different there, Dr. Beckett.
Well, Brad, you were distinguished.
I appreciate the compliment.
There's a lot of people that talk about stuff, but everybody in the room was a doer, was putting their mouth where their mouth was. They're out there and they're speaking things, and you can take pot shots when you're out there. So my hat's off to anybody that's producing content. If you have good content, people are going to find out about you and pass it along. And so again, keep it up, Brad.
I appreciate it. One of the things that really did surprise me, because I do watch Jeff Wilson, I do listen to his podcasts, and there's a lot of people that give him a lot of negative talk, and I personally on this platform want to say, give him a chance. I didn't have the honor of meeting the man. I didn't get a chance to shake the paw. But I tell you what, I was impressed more by his courteous, his willingness to learn, his willingness to grow, and his genuine heart of trying to do good. Now we all make mistakes. We could all be better. We could all do certain things differently. But that was one of the things that I noticed the most at at the dinner. There was a lot of big, bold personalities in the room, and everybody was really winning to learn and to just share ideas, and that was extremely fascinating for me. So I personally want to say, everybody, just give everybody a chance, listen to everybody, because it was a great time. It was a great time, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all that you did. So,
and I want to say something about Mr. Wilson. I watched his videos, and it was interesting. He's created and sold, and I don't know what he's doing right now other than playing baseball cards, but he's done a bunch of startups. Mm-hmm. He has done startups. You know, one thing we hear Jim say all the time is that he really appreciates the people with the entrepreneurial spirit. Well, he's definitely got that. And and there's something about somebody, you know, as Jim says, about being a doer. Well, he's also got the entrepreneurial spirit in addition to being a doer.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it may upset some people because, well, he's charging for things that other people provide for free, but he's also figured out why he should charge for it. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a problem, you know, I may not choose to use that service, but anybody who does knows that there's a logic behind what he chooses and why.
Yeah.
And the same with, I believe, what was it, the card ladder guys in the artist corner? Again, if they charge, they're charging because they've done data-driven, and they've done sort of like we did when we were in Beckett. They've done analysis of the data, not just to say, okay, the card sold, but we're pretty comfortable that the card legitimately sold and not just a fake saying it sold.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did notice, and honestly, because y'all are more in the history of, was the big bulk plastic cases that encased all of the encased to hold the encased cards. But it seemed like there were more and more and more and more of those as hobby elders, or whatever you want to call it. I can't come up with a different name. I mean, does it concern you that you see so many high dollar cards and not so much on the low end, or is it just a fact of the growing hobby?
Well, showcases are proportional to the value of the items. You know, you're going to have more showcases the more you have valuable items. So you don't want people to palm off your table, and you know, they shine them up nice and everything looks great. And so there's a display aspect, like we say, a flexing aspect. But you know, at a big show, a lot of dealers want to bring their best stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
And we're talking about all these showcases. We're going to take a very quick trip back in memory lane, because this is Memorial Day weekend. In addition to thanking all the people that were veterans, if you're of a certain age like I am, one of the big shows growing up was the Memorial Day weekend show in New York, held by the Gallagher brothers. About 1974 or 5, Marv Albert spent 5 minutes on a Channel 4 broadcast when free TV was still a thing, you know, long before cable, you know, showing his childhood collection, taking film from the show. And by the next day, that show had tripled in attendance. It's also one of the shows where I saw one of the greatest fistfights I ever saw in the history of the hobby, but we'll talk about that another time. But it was two rival families out of Brooklyn. Jim will probably know who they are if I tell you they're two rival families out of Brooklyn. But that show was a very influential show for 5-6 years. That was part of the big time show circuit. And I believe they did programs and buttons. And do you still have any of the buttons?
I do. The badges, the little button badges that you got for coming in the show. Yeah. I don't know what I can do with them, Rich. I mean, I
can't even send them to ComC. Or you probably could, but they'd probably cost you an arm and a leg to get them listed.
Well, I mean, I don't think I put it on ComC, but it's just, Masters golf tournament badges from the early days go for outrageous amounts of money. So, but these are probably too easily reproduced. But those were the good old days, Rich. I mean, they weren't even showcases. A lot of it. People just had stuff on their table, and the volume wasn't there because there wasn't this mass production. And so, if somebody had a full table of cards, they were good cards.
The Gallagher brothers would put their cards in rubber bands and put them on the tables. They didn't even use boxes. They were in rubber bands on the table. You know, we'd all like to go back and buy all those cards, but I think we bought what we bought when we enjoyed them. And, you know, we were building our collections in those days. And in those days, everything was cheaper where you could afford, and I know Brad and I had talked about this frequently, you could afford to build your collection and be a dealer at the same time. Mm-hmm. Today, you really can't. If you're going to be a dealer, and there's nothing wrong with that, you really can't be a collector. Now, if you have another source of income, then you can be a collector. Then you can be a dealer. Jerry Adamick at one of your hobby dinners said one of the greatest things his wife said. He was complaining about how prices going up, and his wife said to him, "You realize, Jerry, you have this wonderful collection you bought with your profits from your collection." And Jerry had a really good job, so he didn't need the hobby money. They didn't need the hobby money to live. So he used his collection profits to build his collection, which is perfectly fine. But if you're going to be in today's world a full-time dealer, you really can't be a collector. Now, if you buy 1,000 cards for $20 and there's 2 Pete Alonsos in there, yes, you can keep the 2 Pete Alonsos. Your cost per card is 20 cents each or 2 cents each, and you're good. You know, it's not like you're blowing the deal over that. But if you make $1,000 and you spend $900 on the guys you collect, and this is how you're making your money, that's probably not the most wise way to go.
Well, you know, there's 2 ways to grow a company or grow a collection. They're kind of similar in that one is bootstrapping, where you kind of pay as you go, and you try to work off your previous winnings. And the other is the accelerated model that a lot of these entrepreneurs want to take, is borrow a bunch of money and jump in with a big splash, and use other people's money or borrowed money or equity partners to get going. And that's akin in a collection to just buying, and then worry about selling later. But you've either got to have the money or borrow the money, or have somebody to invest alongside you. And more and more of these companies want to take the quicker route. Whereas, Rich, as you say, back in the old days, more companies were careful about taking on debt. And a lot of these hobby veterans you're talking about were, you know, Jerry Adamick was, I'm sure he was putting some money in, but it was within reason. He wasn't loading up the credit cards.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and speaking of that, Jim, did you see that 2 of the fractional share companies each got another boost of money in the last 2 weeks since we've last really had a show where we didn't have guests? I believe both Rally and Collectible, and I think the total between the 2 of them is like $42 million. Yeah. That's a lot of money for that, for the, we'll call it, you know, that field, the fractional field.
Well, my sense is that the fractional field is a much safer bet than the NFT. The NFT has more upside because I think the potential is limitless. Right. And you can make something, and it doesn't cost you anything to make it, and you can resell it and resell it and resell it and make money off, you know, the trading within your own ecosystem. But like I said, I think the fractional thing is a pretty safe bet. When people are loaning or investing money in that category, it's in some sense securitized by the fact that they at least initially own something. They own something that has a value. Now, maybe they've overpaid, maybe they can't sell out, but still, the security is that they own stuff. And when they sell it and they take shares, they get money in where they could pay off the investors.
And didn't you say some of those were also even more strictly regulated? Like when I set up a Kyle show, there's no regulation to what I do. I do what I do.
Otherwise, you've got a pyramid situation where, you know, they get in the money and they're supposed to buy stuff, but then they buy a little bit of stuff, but they take some money out, and then they use the new investors' money to buy more stuff and all that. So again, that part I hope is extremely regulated. And if that's the case, if somebody puts $30 million into a company and it's securitized by $30 million worth of collectibles, the risk is the value of the collectibles could go down, or that the owners could abscond with the funds. But I think they've got a pretty nice business going, and I hope they do well.
You know, and it's like, I'll never be able to afford, unless I hit the lottery, you know, some of those cards. Mm-hmm. But if I choose to be in those two companies or Alt or any of those other companies, and let's say I have an extra couple hundred lying around, I can then say I own a piece of, and we'll go for the moon, of T206 Wagner. I can never own a T206 Wagner unless it's a reprint. But I can sure own a piece of a T206 Wagner, and there's something nice about owning a share in something, just like you can feel, whatever public company you want to say you want to own a share of, there's something nice about saying, I own 5 shares of Amazon. I own 5 shares of AT&T or whatever. I own 5 shares of a Wagner. That, it's not great. And yes, we as a hobby grew up expecting to own the whole card, 100% of it. But hey, if in today's world, if I own 5 shares of Wagner, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, in the chat, I don't want to side rail everything, but everybody's really talking about the National. And it looks like the National is a go. Are either y'all planning on making that trip up to the National, or I haven't really decided either way, yes or no, but we're 6-8 weeks out now. Just borderline time for flights to really start super increasing, just borderline time for for hotels to start increasing. And then you've got to worry about the mask restrictions or anything. I mean, some of the comments that I've heard, and even I was having a conversation with one man, Cubs Bo, and he was saying there's a potential for there to be no restrictions whatsoever by the time the National comes. So are y'all planning on going to the National? I mean, what's your thoughts on that so far?
Well, I am hoping that I am blessed enough by my employer to send me to the National. Mm-hmm. We get more We've gotten more cards the last 2 shows that when I'm frankly walking the floor, talking to people, even if I'm stopping at a dime box or a quarter box or a dollar box or a discount box, that's pretty good. And I mean, and internally, we are planning as if there will be a National. I can't say what it's going to be like, but for frankly, for ComC, the way the ComC booth works, it would work with it would work with the National at full 100%, and it would probably work with the National at 60%, because we don't get like Tops where people come for Alan Norris Pack Wars, or we don't have necessarily the redemptions of an Upper Deck or Panini, and we don't have the lines where Panini then sometimes I believe they've honored other companies' redemptions, and then given away some of the stuff they've had. So for us at ComC, it would actually just be business as usual. Just like the last time we were in Chicago, we had a meeting room in the back where we prepped a lot of the boxes that got shipped out of. You could come to the booth, and maybe every couple of hours, somebody would then wheel the stuff to the meeting room. So for us, the National, however it will be no change. The numbers I'm hearing are between 80 and 95% chance of having a normal National. We know nobody wants to say 100, but it's 80 to 95%.
Well, I believe it's 100% chance that we're going to have it in late July. I think there's an 80% chance that it's going to be without restriction. That's what I'm concerned about, and I think other people should be. So I'm waiting till June 1st to find out. And you heard it here first. I think Brody is the kids ambassador for the National. I'm nominating Rich to be the big kids ambassador for the National, and with that, he would be bestowed diplomatic immunity.
Well, as we've said, the odds are good, but until, as the old saying goes, the check is in the bank. And Jim, when he sold his company, I'm sure understood that part of the sentence. Until the check is in the bank, so to speak, we'll just say there'll probably be a National. But until they announce the exact form and until all the restrictions are done, we won't know what all the final fine tooling is. But if I had to make a guess, I'd go with the 80 to 95% chance we'll have a National as expected. And as to Bo's latest comment, it's interesting they're announcing their list of signers on June 8th because that's a few days after TriStar show in Houston in June. Mm-hmm. So they're probably going to work out logistics of how to run an autograph pavilion based on the Houston show next week.
Well, it would be interesting to see if they've already talked to Kyle about what he's done over the past couple of shows, because he's had autographs successfully.
Well, I will tell you, there's a couple people who work for TriStar that attend that show.
Yeah.
And I think they monitor that. And I know when they couldn't come up, they reached out to both Dave Slipka and me for our opinions on what happened. Mm-hmm. And so they've been monitoring Kyle's show and the autograph guest situation ever since Kyle started bringing in autograph guests, or he now outsources it. But ever since the autograph guests started reappearing at Kyle's show, I believe last June.
Yeah. So Panini, and somebody asked if Panini is going to have their VIP. I have not heard anything about Panini having the VIP. The last word that I heard, and this is about a week and a half old, is that they were not going to have it. But things change rapidly in the hobby, so I'm still of the wait and see on that one. The other question was of Dr. Beckett, your content creators dinner, if you were just going to hold that in Dallas, or if you were going to the National, are you going to plan on something like that there as well?
Well, I've never missed the National, so I'll look forward to being there for pretty much the whole time now. I'm enjoying it too much to leave early or come late. Mm-hmm. But I do some different dinners, and to have a hobby content creators dinner is rich. And you both know, Brad, where you hold it is kind of sets the tone. So if it's in a noisy place, it can be really festive, but it's not. It won't be about the content. It'll just be about having a good time. So trying to figure out if that's something. It has some appeal. I mean, I really got a lot out of it. I hope you guys did too, as a first effort. And to do another one perhaps in July, the question is, what would we do different? But I think Rich was very affirming that keeping it very close to the show, if actually in the show hotel, really made it convenient that people didn't have to jump in their car or find a place. Mm-hmm. So yeah, something like that perhaps. The challenge is people don't usually want to leave their during the show hours. They want to sell or buy or do their stuff. So the early start on Saturday evening but there's a lot of competition when you're at the National. There's the table lotteries and all that stuff. Rich, what's the best night of the National? That don't groups get together on certain nights anyway?
Yeah, well, traditionally, and the only thing I usually go to now is Leon Lucky's Net 54 dinner on Friday night. There are other events. I've gone to some in the past. But this year is so up in the air on that I can't tell you what I would do, and then finding a place would certainly be just as interesting. The lottery is held as like a breakfast in the morning. So that's really not a competition for that. The dealer lottery and the annual meetings, thankfully, is no longer an issue either. We can both regale you with stories of annual meetings that went till 2 a.m. Now they're done in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's a lot better. So those things are good. And the one thing I noticed, because Saturday night is quote trade night, when you left the dinner, were you as amazed as I was by the energy in the hallway and all the trades going on? That was almost as good as the show itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was awesome. It was amazing. John and I were absolutely exhausted. I could barely, and John would have stayed there and talked forever. I had, I was sitting there talking to Angela and Steph. I could have talked to everybody forever, but I was so tired. I was literally, I was doing this, and I'm like, John, I gotta go. But we could have been there and then jumped outside in that energy in that room. I mean, it was just, it was amazing. Even in my former position or my former, you don't have that kind of energy after a show. That's not typical. So I don't know how it is at any other normal shows or anything like that, but that was just wild and awesome and amazing to see.
Well, back in the day, the old Willow Grove show in the world's worst hotel, where the really smart dealers who had extra money would rent a room at the hotel to do their business and then sleep at a good hotel, a few. The George Washington Motor Lodge could have been the worst hotel in the history of the world. And if it wasn't the worst, it's right up there. It's worse than Motel 6s. George Washington may have actually slept, and the rooms may never have been clean since he slept there. But before the Friday, the show began Friday at 7, and Bob Schmier had his, very strict rules. But if you got to the show about 2 o'clock and you just walked up and down, so to speak, the lobbies outside, half the rooms were open and they were doing business, and they had stuff, and they had stuff, and they had stuff. And despite how much money was done on the show floor, there may have been as much money done in those rooms before the show actually began. And that's the closest I can remember to a scene like the Dallas Card Show. My friend Raymond Jones, who was sitting outside the show floor just keeping an eye on things, he was there overnight. He said the last people got out of that trade night at 3:30 Sunday morning.
Whew.
There was also a wedding bringing extra energy too.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
But apparently the card people, started dispersing maybe 2:30, and then at 3:30 the last couple finally left. That's how much energy is done in the Dallas Card Show after the show. Trade night really is quite an event. It's almost as fun to go through that, except I was in the middle of 2 straight nights where I was technically up late. So I really didn't want to just sit and talk, because I actually had a quick thing Friday night. Most of my old baseball fantasy league, which were baseball card collectors and dealers in the 90s, most of them just showed up at the show. So we had a dinner across the street. I just stayed through appetizers. I got an appetizer and left on Friday. And then we had our annual Brotherhood dinner on Sunday. So I was in the middle of a 3-night, just being out. And Brad will tell you, both of us, when we had lunch on Wednesday, both of us were in the recovery phase still.
I just started like yesterday, not having to take a nap in the morning. I'm getting to that age where 30-minute naps in the morning are a good thing. So, and I'm considered a young pup. So that's young. How tired I was. Oh, so let's see. We've got the National. I appreciate breaking that one up.
But one of the things is, when we were talking about the more expensive cards, and Jim alluded to this with the Target parking lot incident, there's, the Panini pulling certain of their cards from Target shelves. The baseball, football, Target's not selling baseball, football, basketball, and Pokemon cards right now.
But
everything else, you can buy hockey cards there. I would imagine, that's a blanket thing, but I imagine if they really paid attention, they've let Topps baseball opening day stay.
Mm-hmm. What was really interesting is this week, Target kept dropping Bowman Blasters and Bowman Megas sporadically throughout on the last couple of days, and honestly, I really liked it. It gave a lot of people a chance to get the Bowman that you wouldn't have normally been able to get. Bless you. As if it was in the actual stores. I was able to get a couple, and I know a lot of people that were actually able to get a couple of blaster boxes, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I kept seeing more, and I kept seeing more, and I kept seeing more. And what I think they did, and this and $3 will get you a Coke, was they took the regular allocations from the store, from all the stores from around the country, and they just trickled it out online. And we have a hobby has been trying to predict how Target would handle this. My first question is, did y'all see this? And number two, do you think this is a good idea to just take all of their stock and you can just trickle it out so that they're able to get it? And I'll ask you, Rich, to start. I don't know if y'all saw it.
I have a couple of thoughts. One, I mentioned Raymond talking overnight security, but we also did lunch on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And on lunch on Tuesday, we were talking about the Target thing, but we were rattling off, and we thought about 20 places where you can still buy cards. It's not just Target and Walmart. It's just that Target and Walmart are so obvious because in many locations, that's where you go. But if in Dallas, there's a whole bunch of places you can still go to buy them, And then if Target really did it that way, where they got, 10,000 in today, and let's just say 10,000 in tomorrow, and they hit it, at different times, then even the bots don't get warning. And if the bots don't get warning, then people like you and me can buy them.
Yeah.
Mark Harwell used to have a saying, rest in peace, Mark Harwell. He's missed, one of the former presidents of my company. And he basically had a saying that there's kind of two approaches to mass retail. One is more structured and one is less structured. And in the structured, you walk in, you know where everything is. You know when, for example, when things are going, maybe this is Target, the aisles are structured. You know where to go to find your stuff. You know when things are coming. They're putting on the shelves at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. And then say Walmart, the other alternative is looser, unstructured. It's hard to find what you want, in the thought that if you're stumbling around the store looking for something, you're going to find some other stuff that you don't need. And so that unstructured way is a better way to do this category now. Because if you tell the collectors that you're going to have a shipment at 9 o'clock, you're going to get the week's worth of blasters, and it's coming in then, and it's going to go right here, then they're not even going to shop the store. They're going to stand in line just for that. If you don't know where they are, when they are, so there's these two approaches to mass retail, and both can be successful. But in our category, too much specificity is leading to fights.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's only because it's so hot. 3 years ago, if you had that much specificity, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Because they weren't selling out so quickly, and you knew when you could go pick up whatever box, if you were looking like I do for Topps Heritage, you knew when you could go pick them up. Now you have to be very careful, about when you go. I went to Walmart 2 weeks ago. I go to the one by Willow Bend, and they had 4 Diamond King $11.95 boxes. I think they had 6. I bought 4 just for the joy of it. And I happened to do very well in terms of what I got out of those boxes. It was a very good value. Mm-hmm. I was personally just as happy with those $11.95 boxes as I would be with a $29.95 or $19.95 Prism basketball box. It's certainly a difference. And that's one thing, and I know I've seen chat on this, maybe not here, is apparently and until I see it actually happen, but it looks like the most blasters, I think DJ of Panini said this on some public forum, that the blaster boxes come September, which is how much lead time the retailers need, will go to $29.95.
Yeah. And that makes logical sense. I mean, they've been in 1999 for a very long time. Yes, everybody's gonna whine and complain, but you know what? It's supply and demand. It's if the supply is there, if the demand is there, you increase. I mean, it's business. I mean, I'm surprised that they were $19.99 for so long, because I won't say value. Let's leave the value out of it, but just the price, the supply and demand of it, I can understand that it going up. I mean, inflation goes up. Why shouldn't everything else? I mean,
Brad, one of the reasons I think everybody tried to keep it at $19.95, and it's one of those psychological reasons. Most of us carry at least one $20 bill in our pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an extra $20 and you walk into Walmart or Target or any of the places that have those, and you have an extra 20 in your pocket, you don't feel like you've really blown it by buying a blaster box.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden at $29.95, then you have to pull out 2 boxes, and it does make a psychic difference.
Yeah, and Ziggy makes a point on the back end of his comment where he says, and I'll bring it out here for a second. Chrome blasters are going to $29.99. Nothing changes for Prism and Select at $30 a box. They'll still flip at $150 or more for football and basketball. We've talked economics, or I've talked about economics and supply and demand. My biggest fear is that all of a sudden when, not if, but when the companies decide to take all of this online, whether it's Target, the distributor, whoever, when it all goes online, my biggest fear is that you're going to see a blaster at 150. You're going to see somebody at some point in time is going to go, okay, enough is enough. Let's price it at $100, and we know the value, or the market says that it's $100. We're just going to say it's $100, and then you're pricing people out of the hobby, and I have a great concern with that, because the smaller or side effect is what happens to the lesser, the 5th or 6th or 7th round rookie draft pick, that card becomes infinitely so much more expensive as far as and I hate to use the word ROI, but there is ROI. My biggest concern is, does that then the after effects of it in those smaller unknown rookie cards and the ability to be able to collect them. As an entrepreneur, Jim, what do you have thoughts around that, or with the history of, are you concerned about that as well?
Well, I mean, it's you've presented one scenario, but there, even what Ziggy's saying, it's not a guarantee that you can flip it at 150 next year. You just don't know.
Yeah.
If the past is an indicator of the future, but it isn't always. There are exceptions. There's things and things change. So in some cases, these 6th and 7th round rookies, if somebody gets a huge hit out of their, then they don't even care about those others. So there may be bargains, when the top draft picks, the very top quarterbacks are going for outrageous amounts of money, and then the regular, pretty good, starting quarterback is chopped liver. At some point those things may equal out. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So there are people that are, I know that they're bottom feeding, but there's some bargains out there for the guys that haven't hit it yet in some of these sports. But you've got to be knowledgeable about the sport. You just can't say, I'm going to buy all the 6th round draft picks. No, there's some that probably have more promise than others. But even that, you just can't know. Tim Tebow may be an all-pro tight end now. I don't think he's going to be, but that would bring him back into the limelight.
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't think he was always popular, but I don't think people were truly chasing, when he first came out, Jarvis Tatum cards. There were a few, but not totally. And yet he dropped the 50 last night against the Brooklyn Nets. That's pretty darn good. That'll goose up him. Ja Morant's had an awesome playoff series.
Yeah.
There are guys, Ja has been in demand for a while, but you still, as Jim says, and believe it or not, even in NBA basketball, you can prospect.
Yeah.
Everybody can say LeBron James is going to be great out of high school, and he was. That class was insane with LeBron, Carmelo, Dwayne Wade. You got 3 Hall of Famers there, in the first 4 picks. We won't talk about Darko. That's like poor Tony Mandarich. Darko is the Tony Mandarich of that draft pad. But you can prospect maybe one level below that, and if the guy takes off even for a month or two, and you've prospected correctly, you can make money on that. And so there is always money to be made, but it may not be the flash and dash money. It could be the grind it out a little money.
But I agree, Rich, but I don't know that people are thinking that way. I think
you and I thought that way. I
know, but when they're determining whether they want to pay way, way above SRP for a pack, a fresh, modern pack of whatever it is, they're not doing a mathematical analysis 99% of the time. They're thinking, I'm paying this amount of money, and I have a chance to get a $100,000 card or a $10,000 card or whatever it is. And if they do, they're not really doing the odds. They're saying, hey, that'd be really cool. So I don't think they're thinking, well, yeah, but it's not like a lottery ticket where you don't get the big win, but you get an intermediate win. I don't think they're.
Well, I'm thinking more of the people who buy it after the lottery players play it. The guys who will go to the table. There's a 3,200 count box of Prism with other than the key rookies, but the other guys all in there. And maybe that box is X amount. And then they say, okay, I want to keep these 10 cards because I'm prospecting these guys. It's the same in baseball. Vladdy Guerrero, I think, was the hot rookie and some Bowman Chrome prospect. Well, I think Tatis Jr. was in there too, and he's out. I mean, Guerrero's having a great year this year, but Tatis Jr. has now outstripped Guerrero. And that was, I think, like one of the elite extra edition products. Where Guerrero came out on fire, Tatis was a couple levels below. If you had been prospecting and you said, I love this kid Tatis, you won and you won and you won, and you won on the second level. You didn't win on the first level. And that's really where I'm coming from.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about, collections for a second. I know, Rich, you told me not to, but, there was before December, I went and I collected and bought the Bowman First Chrome complete set. And I did that through Sport Lots, and I did that through one of your smaller shows. And I built that set up at pennies on the dollar because I went to a couple of the breakers and said, hey, I'm looking to build this set. I know you're opening these cards. What what would you charge for these Bowman Chrome First cards? And I've built, other than the Jason Dominguez, I've built that entire set. I'm still looking for that Jason Dominguez because I want to be able to complete that set. However, are people not thinking of those other ways other than, hey, I just need to go get that $150 blaster because I want that win. I want that rush. I want that. I don't know. I think there's that flash money, and there's the actual other smarter ways to do it. So I don't know. I think Jim, you said it. There's other different ways to do it in the hobby or build collections in the hobby other than continually paying for the higher box prices. And excuse me for being familiar.
No, the $30, $20 or $30 blaster box price for Prism or Select or something like that is like a lottery ticket. But the value of the lottery ticket, according to the current price structure, is far above 30. So it is not gambling to buy all of the $30 blaster or $20 blasters you can find, and not necessarily just to sell them for $150, because if you break them, you're liable to get $150 worth of value from that. Now at $150, the calculus is different. It's like buying the lottery tickets at a price lower than what the payout is going to be. You should buy all the tickets.
Yeah,
it's not when you get up to 150. All of a sudden, there's an equilibrium there, and you're going to have more even odds of winning and losing. So yeah, it's not gambling if you buy real cheap.
And that was something in the 80s that I think was an underrated part of what we now call either the junk wax boom, or I call the overproduced boom. Your BTE, or your barrier to entry, was very minimal in those days.
Quite a bit lower, yeah.
Yeah, and so you could buy, if you bought 86 Donruss, and the packs were, let's say it's $20 for the box, it may be in 30, and you pull the Jose Canseco out of the box, which is a reasonable possibility, you've almost paid for your whole box right there. Mm-hmm. And then your other cards, people were building sets. You could do things with the rest of your cards in that box. And that's what Jim is saying, that we're in that way, we are reverting almost to the overproduced era, in that if you're buying it at the low price, then you're actually not really gambling. You're almost guaranteeing breaking even or making a profit just by busting the box at 30 or 20.
Yeah.
At that moment in time.
At that moment in time.
There came a time 10 years later where it was not a good deal.
No.
The SRT. But now, 25 years later, it's flipped. And again, I'm not saying it's gold, but if you've got unopened, 86 cases, you made money now.
Yeah.
It just took a while to get there. It took a generation.
Yeah. So let's talk about we again at the Dallas Card Show, I heard a lot. You had all the Pelican cases or people walking around with their cases with their expensive cards, trying to sell and trying to trade. And as I was walking around the show and listening, I heard, "Hey, are you buying? Hey, are you buying? Hey, are you buying?" And I heard a lot of, "No, I'm not having such a great show," or "I'm not buying right now. Talk to me later." And there's been a lot of content, a lot of creators, and a lot of people conjecturing and guessing. And you see the Jordan rookies that were above $1 million. Now they're selling for $300,000. Are we in that market crash, or are we in that correction, or have we just gotten to a point where you need to be a little bit smarter about what's going on?
I want to throw out something, and I didn't realize this. This year May show was a little bit different than last year, let's say. Our taxes were due May 17th. Mm-hmm. The show was a week later. Traditionally, April shows used to be kind of slow for that very reason. A lot of people had paid their taxes. I didn't even realize if a lot of these people had paid their taxes properly. I was very happy my tax bill went down this year, thankfully. Mm-hmm. Last year, my stimulus check, basically, the government sent me a stimulus check. I sent it back to them to pay my taxes last year. It was like a trade. Okay, you sending me money? You sending us money? You sent me and my wife money? It was a $1,200 stimulus check, and $1,176 went back to the government. Mm-hmm. They literally traded it.
Yep.
It was almost like, why bother sending it? Because you're just getting it back.
Right.
But the taxes, in all seriousness, were due on Monday, and the show was Thursday. If you waited to pay your taxes, as you should, if you owe money and then all of a sudden you paid it on Monday, you may not have the extra capital either.
No, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Because everybody, I did hear a lot of, well, not right now. Well, not right now. Well, not right now. And I'll tell an interesting story that I was at one booth. It was a gentleman's booth, and this kid handed the gentleman. I don't know what the card was. I came in the middle of the conversation, but the kid wanted $1,500 for his card, and I just went, $1,500. I mean, this kid's like 8. He had a 15. I was like, man, at that age, a $1,500 card. But the guy literally said, I just sold one for, and I think he said 900 is what he said for. I just sold one for 900. It would cost, and they were doing great negotiation back and forth. But in that conversation, he did say, I just haven't had a great show. And I didn't think about that at night. I don't know if all these people that are saying market crash and market correction, are they thinking about the timing in the hobby? I don't know. I don't know.
Brad, let's just eliminate the word crash. It's not even good to speak it.
All right.
Correction is reasonable, and that's a natural. But what we're coming out of is an outlier year of 2020 where dealers were buying, because in 2020 was the emergence of a lot of these analytical tools that were more available instantaneously, almost, where people could figure out here's the comp, but everything was trending up, and so dealers, it was one of the most aggressive buying and trading years for dealers in the history of the hobby, because things were so bullish. And so dealers were buying. But give the dealers a break in 2021. Now we have a mixed market. Somebody's walking up to their table. They're there to sell. They're not there to buy. Mm-hmm. They're there to sell. And somebody comes up and says, I got some cards here that I want to sell you at future retail. And the dealer maybe is dismissive, but probably is trying to size up this person. Hey, if I'm going to buy some, for me, if you're offering it to me at half price, I'm going to consider it. If you're offering it to me at 30-40% off, I'm considering it. But if it's 10% off and I got to give you the money, and maybe I sell it, and maybe it's peaked in value. I mean, I just think it's unrealistic. What happened in 2020, 2021 now, you should go to a show to buy cards from the dealers that are there. And if they want to, if you want to trade or sell your cards to the dealer, you ought to be he or she, that dealer ought to be getting a break. Shouldn't be value for value. He paid for his table, he paid for his lodging, all that stuff. So I think dealers should not get a bad rap for saying, "Hey, I haven't sold enough stuff yet to be able to pay big bucks for your card that you want to sell me at the prevailing price that I can't mark up."
Mm-hmm. And I actually want to point out a positive in this market correction. And I know Ziggy said one thing, but I'm going to go on a different level. Nat Turner of PSA posted on Twitter the other day that with the exception of some outlier orders where the number of cards didn't match, or there's problems with who the order came from, there may not have been a name, PSA is caught up on, we'll use the term order entering. The 3-month delay has at least allowed them now to get everything into their system. And I'll use the word everything, even though that if your order is one of those ones that goofed up, I apologize. But we'll use the term everything into their system, where now at least they can focus only on grading cards for the next month or so. And that's a wonderful thing. I know, without going into details, ComC, where I work, has shipped out more packages the last couple of weeks on a weekly basis than ever before. Still catching up, but those are signs that the market correction is letting the corporates, like a PSA, like a ComC, catch up on things. Something else Nat Turner announced or PSA announced, and I frankly thought it was long overdue, despite what some people on Net 54 said, is for now at least, they are not putting qualifiers on their cards. It's no longer a 9OC. It's a 7 or an 8. I'm fine with that. In fact, right now it's overdue. Everything you have right now, even if it's 2 extra seconds to put the OC on a card, that's 2 extra seconds that somebody has to think about something instead of just assigning it a grade. And if you're playing catch up, yes, I know that some of the collectors may upset, but right now on a business level, you've got to do it that way just to catch up. You don't want to be X millions of cards behind. If you're 100 cards behind, okay, yes, go back to it. But if you're millions, I thought that was way overdue. And I think, as Jim said previously, those are decisive decisions, and there may even be more internally that Nat has either done or let his team do that maybe they felt constrained on before when they were a public company, and now that they're private, they're able to make these decisive decisions.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting them coming out. But I did read the long article, and one of the things that I took out of it was the technology. We've had this conversation, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. The technology that they're about to institute and help that they're about to give, and the money that they're about to drop into the front end, so that they're not concerned about that money on the front end because they know they'll make it up on the back end long term. And to see them actually come out and say that, and B, know it and share it, it's refreshing. It's kind of refreshing to be able to understand that. So we're coming up on time. We got another 45 seconds left. I will let you, Mr. Jim Beckett, have your last words and your comments.
Well, one of the reasons I do this show, because I like you guys, but it's really great to see the chat and the comments and who's participating in that way. And, it's always fun to hear from, I think the idea of a live show, I noticed Jeremy just popped in. A live show is really interesting. You don't know what you're going to get. I don't know what's going to come up, and it's fun. So, Brad, you did a great job on the controls. Rich, always great to work with you, and look forward to doing this again next month, I guess.
As Mickey Mantle once said, after Casey Stengel spent about 10 minutes in Congress explaining his history in baseball and promptly confusing all the congressmen, just think about the leaders of today's tech and today's congressmen. It's the same principle. And they asked Mickey for his opinion because I agree with everything Casey just said. So I'll just say I agree with everything Jim's just said, and we'll leave it at that.
Well, everybody, I appreciate your time. Thank you for giving it to us. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are. I will quote the great John Newman, hobby your way. I will quote myself, you do you, boo. Don't let anybody steal your light. I will say that if you are struggling in the hobby and you need help, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am always here, always got an ear. I'm very, very active on Twitter to be able to respond. There's a bunch of guys that will tell you not a problem whatsoever. I will respond as quickly as I can. Thank you, Dr. Beckett. Thank you, Uncle Rich Klein. It's greatly appreciated. And y'all have a fantastic Saturday. And God bless.